don't think that will happen, but because the Israelis can't afford to let it happen. I mean, the last thing the Israelis want is for America to say, we're done with you. Das vidanya, goodbye. No, the Israelis won't let that happen. They'll jettison Netanyahu before they jettison America. So, but I do think we're going to get to the point where we're going to start telling the Israelis, it's our way or goodbye. And as soon as we do that, the Israelis will fall in line. They have no other choice. Their survival is on the line.
Scott, let's move into the Ukraine right now and the latest out of Ukraine. Can you give our audience an update what is going on with that conflict?
Well, again, I just start off by reminding everybody that I sit in a chair that's thousands of miles removed from the actual battlefield. So I don't have any frontline reporting, personal observations of the fighting. I haven't interviewed anybody recently who's doing the fighting. So I am a prisoner to the data that comes out of the battlefield, both from the Ukrainian side and from the Russian side. I am an experienced military analyst, and I'm intelligence analyst, so I'm pretty good at taking fragmentary reports and breathing life into them to try and make them as accurate as possible. And doing that, applying that skill set to the available information, it's clear that the Ukrainian army has been strategically defeated as we speak. They have depleted their ability to replenish themselves in terms of manpower. They're sending old men and women. Some of these women are pregnant to the battlefield. That's a sign of desperation. There is no ability to reinforce them with heavy armor, with artillery. The world has said we can't supply you with the artillery shells you need. Indeed, in the Advika battle that's going on, one of the main battles for this fortified town and this fortified entity that's been, occupied by Ukraine since 2014. The Russians are making dramatic gains in the urban area because Ukraine has literally run out of ammunition. They aren't able to offer any meaningful resistance. And so the Russians are rolling. And this is, one of the key parts of the battlefield. It's being replicated up and down. They don't have manpower. They don't have equipment. They don't have ammunition. They don't have hope. The Ukrainian leadership itself is saying that they can't sustain the line of contact the way it's currently configured. And the commander of the ground forces has said that they're probably going to have to make some very difficult decisions in terms of withdrawing in order to preserve whatever lives are left. So, that's taking place. The Russians, on the other hand, are just moving forward, not overly aggressive. They are pushing where the opportunity provides. Russia's not in the business of just needlessly sacrificing troops. I mean, that's the big the headline. Russia lost 13,000 men in Advika because of human wave tactics. Absolutely not. Russia lost men in Advika. It's a bloody battle, but not human wave tactics. The Russian go in. The Ukrainians, at times, when they have ammunition, offer stiff resistance. Sometimes that resistance repels a Russian attack. And man, it gets ugly when your attack is repelled. It means you're dying. It means that, not just are you being suppressed, but it means that the forces that you've put forward to try and occupy a position have been repelled. And that, that process being repelled means that the enemy is brought in superior firepower at that point in time on the battlefield, and you're getting killed. So suddenly the battlefield is littered with Russian dead, blown up Russian tanks, blown up Russians. That's happening, guys. It's, a Russian victory doesn't mean that everything's great. I remind people about World War II. I think everybody knows that we went across the beach at Normandy on June 6th. We, the United States, Canada, Great Britain, France, went across the beach. Bad battle. Normandy was a big battle. Then we fought in the hedgerows. That was tough fighting. Then we moved through and we had the Battle of the Bulge. That was tough, man. The Germans counterattacked. They wiped out regiments, weakened divisions, took thousands of prisoners, killed tens of thousands of Americans and British. We counterattacked, and then we moved in and we fought the bloody Battle of Aachen. We were breaking the Siegfried Line. The Battle of Hürtgen Forest was very bad. We got up to the Rhine, Remagen. We went over, and by 1 April, we had won. I don't think there's a person in the world that wasn't saying, America might lose this one. We had won. The Soviets had won. They're moving in on Berlin. A lot of fighting left, but nobody was saying, I think Germany's going to pull this one out of the bag, guys. I think they got a magic rabbit out there. Hitler's going to do something. No, it was over on 1 April. Over. You know what the bloodiest month for American troops was in World War II in the European theater? April 1945. From 1 April till the end of April. We lost more men in combat in that month, even though it was over. Because a dying body can still fight back viciously. And the Germans were a dying body at that time, but they fought back hard. So when I say that Russia has achieved a strategic victory against Ukraine, they have. There's no reversing this outcome. Russia has won and they will win. But any notion that that somehow means that Russians aren't going to die or that there's not a potential for Russians to die in large numbers is absurd, The Ukrainians have been fighting ferociously, heroically in many cases, and they still have that capacity. Many Ukrainians believe in their cause. Even though they've been betrayed by their government, betrayed by their leadership, they believe in the cause of defending Ukraine. And so they will fight to the death. Tragically, they're going to be given that opportunity in increasing, occasions going forward. But, this war is over. The fighting's not. The death and destruction's not. But Russia has won this war. It's irreversible. Basic military math. When you are consuming manpower and resources at a great rate that far exceeds your ability to replenish those resources, you're going to lose. It's what the Confederacy faced against the Union. General Lee took the Army of Northern Virginia up against the Army of the Potomac and fought them in battles where, Grant lost more men than the Confederates did. But if the Confederates lost 10,000, but you could only replace them with 2,000, Grant lost 30,000, but could replace them with 50,000. Do you see what's happening here? The correlation of forces shifts. In every battle, even if the Confederates won, they lost because they lost men they couldn't replace. Meanwhile, the Union was bringing in more resources, boom, 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 until it was over. The Confederacy got swamped. What we're looking at today is basically 1865 in the American Civil War. Oh, no, the Army of Northern Virginia is in the field. Oh, no, they can fight. When they fight well, and they can inflict casualties. But it's over because the correlation of forces is such that they're going to get swamped. And this is what we're seeing right now on the line of contact between Russia and Ukraine. The Russians are starting to swamp the Ukrainians. Slowly but surely, they're penetrating as the Ukrainians are compelled to defend indefensible lines. All these big bulges you see in there, there's an inordinate amount of Ukrainian manpower committed to defending this bulge, which is going to fall. That's why the Ukrainian leadership is saying we basically have to get all those troops out of there and spread them along the line of contact because we don't have any other troops. If we keep them there, they're all going to die. We're not going to win this battle. And so you're going to see that happening, the straightening of the line, the consolidation of forces, spreading them out. But again, you spread them out and it just repeats the meat grinder operation all over again. And the Ukrainians don't have forces to replace. There's no reinforcement. Even if they got the money that they want from the United States, money doesn't grow bodies. So even if that money was translated into military equipment at some point in time down the road, Ukraine doesn't have the ability to generate 9 to 12 brigades worth of manpower to fall in on this equipment. They're never going to replicate the army that they built earlier this year to carry out this counteroffensive. That army has been destroyed and it's not going to be rebuilt. Meanwhile, Russia not only mobilized 300,000 troops back in the fall of 2022, the majority of whom have yet to be committed into combat, all of whom have been training ever since then, getting new equipment, training on new tactics and techniques and procedures. 400 plus thousand volunteers, in addition to that 300,000, have been brought in. Many of them have come in, been put into the battle. Many others are waiting as reserves. Russia is sitting on hundreds of thousands of well-trained, well-equipped, well-led reserves that have yet to be committed to this battle. Their power is increasing as the Ukrainian power is decreasing, which means it's over. It's over. That's the reality. Now, that battlefield reality is translating into political problems for the Ukrainians. Remember, Russia's objectives are twofold in there in terms of the operation. Demilitarization, which is taking place. It means the destruction of the Ukrainian military, and denazification, which is a political resolution to this issue. Denazification can only occur, and Russia has said this, when the Zelensky government is finished. The Zelensky government's finished. I mean, yeah, he's still running around, flying around, shaking hands, trying to beg money, but he's done. The Ukrainian people are abandoning him. The Ukrainian parliament is abandoning him. The Ukrainian parliament's on the verge of just dismantling itself because they're scared. They don't want to hang around. They know what they have done. They know that when there is a time for accounting, they will be called before the court of public opinion or whatever tribunal they'll be put before. They have to explain, why did you make Stepan Bandera the national hero? That's a tough one to explain after you lost a war to people who despise Nazis. Tough one to explain. Why did you pass a resolution or an amendment that said that Ukraine has to be a member of NATO? That's another tough one to explain after NATO abandoned you. I mean, it's a good thing when it looks like NATO's with you. But now you're looking around going, where's NATO? They ain't to be found. Why did you pass that amendment that trapped us into NATO? Oh, tough one to explain. Why did you do this? Why did you do that? Why did you do this? Why did you do that? They can't justify anything they've done. And so they are in the process of saying, we're out of here. We're disbanding. Even Zelensky's own party is saying, we're done. It's over. We're looking at the political collapse of Ukraine, which will lead to denazification once the Russians finalize their military victory. So this means that Ukraine itself as a nation is folding in on itself like a house of cards. That's where we're right now. It's not just military defeat. We're looking at the absolute total strategic defeat of Ukraine, economically, militarily, politically.
I think if the European Union is not careful, with their full support, as they say, behind the Ukraine, welcoming them on we'll call it a faster track to become one of the members of the European Union, this could cause some serious damage to, the EU itself. When you gobble up something that is a bottomless pit with no economy to move forward in that country, I mean, it's quite dangerous. We're not talking a country, like a Baltic country with 1 or 2 million people. We're talking, 40 million people with no economy. The only reason that they came up with some figures is because all the funding that has come in from North America. Now, here's a question for you, Scott. What on earth is the American government doing, pumping all these billions of dollars over there when some of the streets in major cities in America are riddled with homeless people? I mean, I know I've never asked you that question before, but I mean, does the average American say, wait a minute, we got to take care of our veterans here. We got to take care of the homeless situation here. We've got to take care of, we have an epidemic in, I think it was with not fentanyl, but you guys, or was it fentanyl or something like that? You have
an Oxycontin too, I think.
Opioids and all of that stuff. So, I mean, is the average American person saying, wait a minute, we got to take care of ourselves back home here? I mean, we're suffering. I'm seeing video after video after video about Canada, about people saying, you know what, we're out. We're done. Financially, we're done. This is not a place to live anymore. I mean, does the average American, have they had enough of this funding in the Ukraine? We'll start with that.
Superficially, you can make that argument for some Americans, but I'll tell you why it's superficial. Over the course of 2 years, we've given Ukraine $115 billion, and we're getting ready to send them $60 billion more if Congress votes in favor. It doesn't look like that's going to happen anytime soon. But in that same 2 years, we spent $1.8 trillion on our defense. That defense can't pass an audit. That defense can't generate a military force capable of prevailing in armed conflict just about anywhere in the world. We can't beat Russia. We can't beat China. We can't beat Iran. We couldn't beat the Taliban. But where was the complaint from the American people? Where were the American people saying 1.8 trillion and you can't do anything? I'm done. I'm fed up. I've had it. Nah, they're getting ready to pass another, $900 billion defense bill. And the American people go, oh yeah, that's a good idea. we'll just keep doing that because we're stupid. That's the reality of it. Let's not pretend that homeless just happened now. Okay, we've had homeless in the streets forever. As long as I've lived in Albany, there's been homeless there. We haven't done a damn thing about them. So we don't care about the homeless. Our education system sucks. We don't care about education. We don't care about healthcare. We've had healthcare problems forever. Oh, yeah, people play the card, but collectively, we just bumble along. Why? Well, hell, it's Christmas time. We know why. Because we wrap ourselves in the cocoon of perceived comfort. And so long as we're sort of happy in this cocoon, we don't want to rock the boat. So the average American who isn't homeless, who has some sort of health care, or at least isn't dying of a disease, is got a job, can go out and, borrow money so they can get that Ford F-150 or that Ram or whatever hell big old truck they want to look like they're real men. If we can turn on TV and watch the NFL or watch baseball, we don't care about anything else. We suck as a society. We are horrible as a society. Ukraine isn't going to suddenly wake us up and go, oh my God, you want to spend $60 billion on a film. That's an argument made by politicians within, the Congress for political purposes. Some of those politicians might be feeling some sort of pushback from the constituents, but historically speaking, all they had to do is throw a couple bucks their way, highway contract, do this. What, you got potholes? Oh, we'll give you money for the potholes. And then, now I can drive my Ford F-150 on a car that on a road doesn't have potholes. I'm happy again. Americans are selfish. We are very selfish people. We have these values, and it's true. I mean, most Americans will give you the shirt off their back if they run into you on the street and they deem you worthy of it. But how many Americans walk by every day, see a homeless person, and don't do a damn thing about it? You just, let's get by here. Oh, I'm driving up to the corner and there's a guy there with a sign that says, I'm a veteran, I'm cold, I'm hungry, I haven't eaten in 2 days, and he wants money. He's looking at me. Oh, God, don't look at him. Let's just, come on, light, turn green. Okay, there. Oh, forgot about him already. We all do it because we suck. We like to put little yellow stickers on our car. I support the troops. Bullshit. I'm not going to say that word. No, you don't. Because if you support the troops, you'll be at the VA hospital right now changing the colostomy bag of a 32-year-old kid who got his guts blown out 8 years ago in Iraq or in Afghanistan. You'd be holding his hand at night as he cries himself to sleep because nobody else cares about him. He's been abandoned by his family. The girlfriend that he thought he was going to go home and marry, she doesn't want to marry a cripple. She doesn't want to marry a guy that poops in a bag. So she left him a long time ago. Everybody looks at him as a loser, and he is a loser. That's how he views himself, and he can't contribute to society. And so he's just sitting there. If you cared about the troops, you'd be there right now with this guy. Right now. I used to transport him in the ambulance when I was driving the ambulance for my local fire department. We'd pick him up frozen on the street, and we'd take him to the VA. And the VA would receive them, warm them up, sober them up, and then out they go again. And I'd pick them up next week, same place, until one day you don't pick them up because they're dead. That's how we treat our veterans. That's how we treat them. Hey, did you kill anybody in Afghanistan? Can I buy you a beer? Can I punch you in the face? Okay, the point is, we don't care about anything. We are superficial as hell. Now, maybe we're starting to wake up because I think people are starting to look at the paralysis of our political system, where whatever, if you're a Republican, you thought the Democrats were the bad guys. If you're a Democrat, you thought the Republicans were bad guys. And I think we're waking up to the reality that everybody's a bad guy in America, or gal. Nikki Haley is no different than Kamala Harris. I mean, one's a Republican fanatic. I'm going to refocus my camera. I think there we go. It went out of focus there for a minute, but because I was moving around too much. I was fooling the technology. But the point is, America's not a very good country anymore. We have great potential. I'm an American. I love my country, but I love my country for its potential. I'm disgusted with my country for how we've allowed ourselves to become what we are today, a people that stand for nothing. We literally stand for nothing. We stood for the Afghan people for 20 years. No, we didn't. We stood for American defense industry. We stood for something, but we abandoned the Afghans. Do you remember before we ran away, how important it was that we're there for the Afghan women? We got to be there for the Afghan women. It's important that we empower the Afghan women. We cannot betray the Afghan who? They have women in Afghanistan? I forgot. Do they really have women in Afghanistan? So we don't care about them. Ukraine, we're going to be with you till the end. Really? It's the end. Where are we? We're running away because we don't care about them. If you cared about Ukraine, why would you allow them to sacrifice 400,000 men on the field of battle in a feudal military enterprise that was never about military victory and always about creating some sort of fantasy-driven hope that the Russian people would rise up against Vladimir Putin? And who are we to tell the Russian people to rise up against Vladimir Putin? Why is that our damn business? We would sort of get angry if the Russians went, hey, America, we want you to rise up against your president. We could stay out of our business. That's getting close to like war. Well, hell, what are we doing? We're actively trying to overthrow Vladimir Putin. And most Americans go, well, that's a good thing, isn't it? Because Putin's a bad man. You don't know anything about Putin. Half you can't even spell his name. And those of you who can don't know anything about the guy. You know nothing about how he came into power, what he faced in 1999, a decade of absolute collapse. Russia was literally falling down the cesspool of life. There's estimates that 10 to 20 million Russians died in the decade of the 1990s from suicide, alcoholism, murder, the negative, fallout from American intervention into Russia to try and create a democracy. But we were never trying to create a democracy. We were just trying to steal Russian resources, make them our resources. Putin took over this failed state. And look at it today. It ain't perfect. No place on the planet is perfect. You ain't going to find a bunch of homeless in Russia right now. Guarantee you that. Healthcare, we got pretty good healthcare there too. Stores are full. The economy's chugging along despite sanctions. And we're telling the Russians, what you have sucks. And they're looking at us going, no. You define suck. Look at yourselves. Who are we to tell the Russians what to do? And who are we to condemn a president? Yeah, he's not Jeffersonian democracy, but we haven't allowed him to be. Ever since he came into power, we've been trying to buy off his opposition. We've poured so much money into trying to disrupt legitimate domestic Russian politics by buying politicians like Navalny, that, Russians can't trust democracy, Jeffersonian democracy, because every political party that emerges in opposition to Putin is paid for by the CIA. So we would, would we really allow the Russians to do this? I mean, I know we accused them of this in 2016. It turned out that was all a lie. But if the Russians came in and said, yeah, we're gonna create a political party and we're gonna fund the guy and we're going to do this, that, and the other thing, we'd say, get the hell out of here. Stay out of our elections. Well, why can't we stay out of theirs? So we don't know Putin. We don't understand Putin. We don't know anything about Russia. And yet we condemn Russia at face value. We buy into everything that's negative about it. Meanwhile, here at home, how many Americans know the issues? We have Americans out there right now who are heavily involved in right to life. Okay, on either side. They know that issue. We have a lot of Americans who are involved in the Second Amendment on either side of the issue. But beyond that, it's my ultimate challenge to all the Americans out there, especially you Americans who criticize the immigrants. Those damn immigrants, they ain't American. Well, I'll tell you what, those immigrants, like my wife, who came over here, she came over legally, had to study for 5 years to become an American citizen. And they had to take a test on the Constitution. And the passing grade is 100%. You don't pass, you don't become an American citizen. Well, she passed. She's an American citizen. They all passed. Now, all you Americans right now, but because we lie to ourselves, I know you're not going to do this, but go online and take the test without Googling the answers, without cheating. Just honestly take the test the way you would if you were an immigrant trying to become American. And I will tell you right now, 98% of you are going to fail it because you don't know anything about America. You don't know the Constitution. You don't know how we are governed. And if you don't know this, then what are you defending? I'm an American. I'm proud of being American. I'm going to defend America. What are you defending? You're defending fiction. You're defending fantasy. You're not defending reality. Because if you don't know the Constitution, you don't know the foundational body of law, of principles, of values that define who we are collectively, people. Because that's the only thing that does it, ladies and gentlemen, the Constitution. And if you don't know it, what kind of American are you?
Scott, I want to bring up a point, and it's going to support what you're saying here about Russia. Just to educate the audience a little bit here, a lot of countries, or let's call them former Soviet countries, maybe Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, countries like that. My wife is Lithuanian. She was born into the Soviet Union until she was, I think, about 8 or 9, and then the European Union and Europe and the Soviet collapsed, and her country, she said it still was Lithuania within the Soviet Union, but of course, different governments. Now, I asked her, I said, what happened, when the collapse of the Soviet Union? And here's to support what you're saying, is that there was a big grab for resources, whether it's oil, gas, cement business, natural resources. The oligarchs got in there. And she said, the same was happening throughout all these, smaller Soviet countries. People were going in there and, taking these assets or buying them cheap. And she said, what had happened at that time, and I'm just going to get the audience to try to understand why these countries, well, we'll call it why Russia is the way it is today. The understanding is that when the Soviet Union collapsed, they went into a capitalistic style of an economy, and people were still living in their homes. There was buildings throughout the town, and the average person, they said, okay, now if you were a baker during the Soviet Union, you're a police officer, if you were a street cleaner, and you had dedicated years when you were living, you were allowed a certain credit system. It was kind of like, we'll call it vouchers to make everyone understand here. So a family of 2, maybe the father was a doctor, the mother was a school teacher. They would get X vouchers, and for those vouchers, they were allowed to either put it towards their property that they owned, or maybe a building that they wanted to buy, or something like that. And how it turned out is most people managed to benefit in a way that their house was paid for, or their apartment, and then most of them had a little summer cabin. You see a lot of these Baltic countries and even Russians say, hey, let's go out to our summer home. And you might say, well, how do you afford a summer home? A lot of this property was allocated, I would say, in the right way. Okay. Now, yes, there was some corruption going on there, where the oligarchs got a lot of these companies and a lot of these natural resources, where everybody else was mostly concentrated on, hey, I got my house, I got my summer house, I'm happy guy, maybe onwards and upwards with the country. Now, statistically now, you will see that over 90% of these people that live either in post-Soviet countries or in Russia do not have mortgages on their homes. Okay. And that is a complete flip side on what's happening in, the collective West countries, where you have massive inflation. You have, people buying into hugely expensive real estate, where you've just suffered 14 consecutive increases in mortgages. I think our viewers will understand clearly what their mortgage payments are outside of the US, which has a 30-year standard rate, but most other countries have a 5-year reset rate. So the fact of the matter here is Russia was prepared for this. Their people were prepared for it. They've gone through it. Most of them own their homes anyway. Okay. And these businesses, they can withstand this. If this kind of shock happens to the US infrastructure, when we're talking the housing market, if the housing market falls in the US, look out, because I would say it is one very big domino effect. And we all say, well, Alex, why would it ever happen? Russia's economy is the one that's going to collapse. Like you said, Scott, everybody has a short memory. 2008, the global financial system in the United States was brought to its knees, and they called the Chinese for help. I mean, are we going to see that dark day come soon, with all this money going out into a country halfway across the world where most people can't even point it on a map? will we see, a breakdown of the, the financial systems here in the U.S.?
Well, the answer is we most certainly could. I'm scared to death of it. I'm getting up there in years, and at some point in time, I'll become that pensioner who will have a very limited income. Um, some, maybe most, derive from Social Security, a concept I've bought into. Um, and what happens when it collapses? Social Security goes away. Let me give you a little history lesson on Russia, because today, yeah, Russia's doing fine. But in 1992, and basically we're talking, you know, 45 years after the end of the Second World War. So if you were one of those 20 or 30-year-old heroes that saved the world by defeating Nazi Germany, in 1992, you're now, in your 70s, you're in your 80s, and it's, you're a pensioner. You used to, if you were a veteran, you get your little certificate that says you can ride the buses or the subway for free. You get your income, you have your house, like you said, it's paid for. But suddenly the Russian economy collapses, and there's no money, none whatsoever. You're not getting any money for food. They're not subsidizing so you're stuck in your apartment, and you sell what you can. You take your mementos. If you're one of those veterans, you take your medals off one by one, and you go to the market and you sell your medals to tourists who come in and go, oh, look, a Soviet medal. And you buy it from him for a penance, because that's what you do. And he takes that and he buys some bread and he buys some tea, or she buys something, and they go up to their apartment and they sit there. They can't have the heat on because they can't afford the heat. And so they're just there. And now, while that's happening, because with the collapse of the economy comes the collapse of law. And so these groups of mafioso come up, because now there's no law, and they say, how can we make money? Because it's capitalism. Capitalism's good. And you make money because now you have a housing market that's gone insane. And you have people saying, we need apartments. We want apartments. People coming in from this, there, and there, especially in Moscow or in the city. People saying we want to live in the city. Well, who has apartments? That old man has an apartment. That old lady has an apartment. But it's their apartment. They own it. They bought it. So what you do is the mafia, and you go to the police and you go to the mayor, and you say, basically, if an apartment is vacant for so long, it then gets put up for auction. And so how do you make it vacant? Well, when the old man comes out looking for something, you put him in a car and you drive him out to the edge of town. You take him to a hill, pop in the head, roll his body down the ravine. You come back in, and the mayor and the cop go, vacant apartment, boom, 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 auction. I buy it for 3 pennies, and now I sell. The mafia did it. You know how many Russian pensioners, these are the heroes of the Soviet Union, the people that saved the Soviet Union, were murdered? Millions were murdered in this fashion. Now, the reason why I tell this story is that could happen to me. That could happen to anybody my age, anybody older. American pensioners. What happens when our system collapses? What happens to us? If you have a mortgage, you don't own your house, by the way, if you have a mortgage. I hope everybody understands that. And if you can't pay the mortgage, they take it away from you. Now you're in the streets because they don't care. They just don't care. But if you do own it, but the system's collapsed, you don't have any income and you can't make the rent, or whatever, they'll take it away. And it's a different kind of mafia. It's the mafia of the banks. It's the mafia of the capitalist, elite, who are never going to suffer. They're going to find a way to continue to survive by feeding off of the suffering of people like me and my neighbors. And we could be looking at a situation where millions of Americans are subjected to not just extreme poverty, but death, starvation, health, exposure. Because if we have a collapse, it's going to be the Great Depression all over again. And guys, this is real. This is as real as it gets. It's time for Americans to wake up. And I say this selfishly. Please wake up, because I don't want to be one of those 80-year-old people on the street, abandoned by society because society has collapsed. And you can't say, well, it won't happen, Scott. Well, if you would travel in the Soviet Union in 1985 and looked around and went, yeah, it's not perfect, but there's a lot of stability here. I mean, it's, Soviets, they pay their pensions, they do this. It ain't going to happen here. 7 years later, wham, it happened. Who knows where we're going to be in 7 years, but I am concerned about, the future of this country, the future of the American people.
You know, I support that 100%, Scott. It's like this. You're 18 years old in America or Canada, Collective West. You go into university if you can afford it. You get into university, maybe you have a student loan. That student loan, they say, well, we'll give you a year after you're done university to pay off, start paying off that loan. No problem. 22 years comes. You're 22, you're out of university, Visa, MasterCard, American Express are waiting there for you saying, all right, here's 10,000, here's 15, here's $20,000 on the credit line without, any money down. Don't worry. We know you're going to get a job. You get into that job, you start working, and the next thing that comes along is the mortgage broker. The mortgage broker says, hey, it's a great investment. You got to get into the mortgage game here. Now, what used to be 10 years mortgage in 1980s, then turned into a 15-year mortgage in the 90s, which turned into a 20-year mortgage in the year 2000. And now 2024, we're into 30 and 40-year mortgages. I call them mortgages for life, okay? And now you got Visa, MasterCard, American Express. You've got that debt. You got the student loan debt. And then you're welcome with your awesome mortgage, which you drive home and you pay property tax, and you pay tax on the car that you drove home to your house and park it in your driveway, and the petroleum that you put into that car that you also pay tax on as well. And then when all said and done, you have a couple of children, and then of course you've got to meet with your banker to put money away for their education, because you don't want them to suffer what you've gone through. And I'm talking about what my sisters go through in Canada. They're older than me right now. I left Canada in 1996, lived in Europe for most of that time, and then moved over to Asia here in China as well. And one thing that I've discovered here, and probably the audience already knows this, but if you don't have a mortgage, if you don't have student loan, there's probably a pretty good possibility that you have a car loan. Now, why do you have a car loan? Why isn't your country investing in infrastructure like this country that I am living in right now in China? You can take a subway, a monorail, a bus, a very, very affordable taxi at all hours of the day, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year without any hassle. And it's safe, and you're not going to get knifed. You're not going to get your bag stolen while you're in society. But in these other countries, they have a transportation system that is broke down. And I went back and I calculated how many cars, we'll call a blue collar worker. My sister works for the school division. I would estimate from her starting working at 22 and let's say retiring at 60, she'll probably go through 8 to 10 automobiles. And I calculated, and just in those 8 to 10 automobiles, and this is something no one's talking about, but America and Canada and Australia and the United Kingdom, all these countries are very good at this propaganda. Got to buy a car, got to upgrade it. Why? Well, your neighbor's got a newer car than you do. You don't want to be humiliated? Get that car. Buy it now. You got to have a new car. What year is your car? 2022? Why haven't you upgraded? The average person loses an absolute fortune on automobiles in their lifetime. Okay? And just a school teacher from Canada, I would estimate my sister loses anywhere from $180,000 to $250,000 in her lifetime just on driving a car. You are right, Scott. Unfortunately, some people are living in fantasy land where they feel that everything's okay. We just get a refinance, or I'll get a better job. We could be at a breaking point here. And you are right. What happens when all hell breaks loose this time? It ain't going to be, a crash. It could be a super crash. And where do we go when we've invaded a lot of countries over the last 30 years? Who's going to welcome us, right?
Well, again, I just want to point out to build on that. We're pretty good at turning on and off the TV. And what I mean by that is I'll turn on the TV if I want to watch, I'm going to give away some here, the Miami Dolphins. It was bad. Bad watching them recently. But, overall the season is going well. But I want to be entertained. I'll watch that. Or if it's something in a news cycle that I believe in, I'll watch that. But the second it turns over to not just homeless in America or something like that, you turn it off because it's unpleasant. But we don't even consider what the hell we're doing around the world, the people we're making suffer. I mean, the Palestinians are front and center right now, but what about the millions that have died in the Congo? We don't talk about that. We don't talk about the role played by Congolese children in mining the material we need for cell phones, the rare earth minerals from the ground with their hands, and what that does to their health. We don't talk about that. We turn that off. What I'm trying to say is, all around the world, there are billions of people that are suffering as a direct consequence of the selfishness of the American people, but we ignore them. Someday, right now we're sort of high on our horse. Protect the southern border, keep those bastards out of here. All those people that want and need and desire and are suffering and are desperate, keep them the hell out of my country. Okay, I mean, we have a right to say that, but understand there may come a day when we'll be going, you guys got room at the end? They're going to go, no. And we're going to be the people that are suffering. We're going to be the people that are dying unseen, unheard, because the rest of the world decided just to turn off the TV and ignore what the hell's happening to us because they don't care about us. Why would they? Why should they? We're not worth caring about. We're not the good guys anymore. We're the bad guys. And, we've alienated the world. And that's one of the things that Israel's doing to us right now, is just making the world turn against us altogether. I used to do a lot of traveling. I mean, I got the passport, and I used to travel around the world, and I was always proud of this document. I still am. A U.S. passport, man, you could take that, show it, and the doors open up because you're an American. You stand for something. But anymore, I mean, I still show the passport. People are like, that don't impress us anymore. Doesn't impress us at all. In fact, it's a detriment. They're like, don't show that. People think you're American. I'm like, really? Look at me. Can I be anything else? I'm not ashamed of being an American. I'm proud of being an American. But, there's people right now, just my mere presence, and they're like, man, no, we just don't want to have anything to do with you anymore. They'll identify me as a human. They say, hey, you're not a bad guy, but you're an American. And so we'll not talk about that aspect of you because we don't like Americans anymore. You've done too much harm. There's too much bad feeling. And that's a damn shame. It's a damn shame it's come to that. Anyways, it is what it is.
Scott, that there's also something that I want to point out here that I think a lot of people, just to build on your point as well, there's a revolution going on here in China in the automotive industry. And my mother is from a province in Canada. We'll call it the Texas part of Canada. She lives near a lot of these oil pump jacks and stuff like that. Alberta, I mean, it's a oil province in Canada, if the viewers aren't aware of it. And it prides itself on just that. It also has an annual, I think, rodeo each year. I mean, the Cowboys.
Calgary Stampede. I've been there twice.
Really?
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right. Okay, cool. So my mother calls me the other day and she says, listen, why are we starting to hear these ads on TV for, these new energy vehicles? They're garbage, aren't they? They're unreliable. They're not very good, right? And I said, what ad did you hear? What car? And she mentioned a brand here that is one of the higher luxury brands in China. And I said, that's interesting. Are they going to come to Canada? And she says, well, why would anybody be interested in buying, driving a Chinese car? And I said, Mom, have you got 20 to 30 minutes? And I have to tell you, this is one, my mother and I, you put us together, geopolitics right away. Cup of coffee and a tea, we're into the geopolitics. She gave me the 30 minutes to explain to her. And she says, we are told over here in North America that these cars are unreliable. They're cheap. They start on fire. They cause accidents. And I said, Mom, did you ever wonder how powerful the United Auto Workers Union is? Do you ever wonder how powerful that is? How much lobbying power that they have? Or why your province would definitely not like to have an energy vehicle in your province? Because, the oil and gas companies that are there. What is happening? I live in the city here of Chongqing. The population is 34 million people. And when you see green license plates on cars, those are new energy vehicles. And I'll tell you my point on where I became a new energy vehicle fan. And I sat in a car about 9 months ago, and we have the equivalent to Uber here. It's called Diddy. And I was driving in this car, really fancy, looked awesome. Unbelievable, cool lighting kit. The guy says, are you okay, sir? Yeah, I'm okay. And in the windshield, as we were driving by all these Chinese signs, the translation changed to English. And I'm looking in the window, the windscreen, the front windscreen. I said, how is that? And he said, oh, sir, it's cameras, they point on that and they auto-generate a translate when you're driving down the street. I said, what the hell? It's like a new world for me here. And I said, this is a great car, and it was smooth. It sounded like a car. I got out and I had to go to the back of the car to see, is there an exhaust pipe on this thing? Now, there wasn't. And I thought, I've been told all my life that, or at least in the last 10 years, these new energy vehicles are just garbage, Alex. Don't go near them. They're terrible. They're going to blow up. They're going to explode. They're cheap Chinese product. Bullshit. Okay? These cars are absolutely revolutionizing everybody's life here. I was in one the other day, and this city sometimes becomes very foggy because there's lots of rivers and mountains here. On the display of the driver, you could see on that display what cars were ahead. I mean, it was just unbelievable on what it did for the average person. And I find a lot of my subscribers, and just like you guys have the show. We're going to put that up right now here. If you guys don't know about this channel, you guys have to add it. Let me just put it up there, and Scott can talk about it in a moment. Russians that have been watching my channel, they saw me in a new energy vehicle, and they said, yeah, we got that car now. I said, what?
Yep.
You got that car? What? Oh, haven't you known, Alex? There's Chinese cars everywhere here. They're all over. They're coming in. I said, now I get it. Now I understand it.
When I was in Russia in May, the big taxi is the Mercedes. I guess everybody wanted a Mercedes. That was the status symbol. The Mercedes, the BMW, things of that nature. And because of sanctions, it's becoming increasingly difficult to keep those cars. Or they have the ability. They're still out there on the road. Don't get me wrong, but the car that's dominating the Russian market right now is Chinese cars. They're everywhere, and we ordered I guess the Russian equivalent of Uber. I don't know what the name of it is, but I got into it, and it was one of these Chinese cars. First of all, I couldn't believe it was a Chinese car because the luxury was just unreal. I mean, it's just comfortable, big, sound system like you wouldn't believe, but everything, the heads-up display of the driver for situational awareness. I didn't see the translation thing. I don't know if they had that or whatever, but it's basically the everything that was happening in that car was just, it said luxury, it said convenience, it said everything, and it was a well-made car. I mean, you can tell a well-made car. This was a well-made car, and they are dominating the Russian market. With you talk about Chinese automobile manufacturers. I was looking at one of these these charts that grow over time, and it was tracking the world's largest automobile producers, and of course America's right at the top, and everybody's boom 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 boom. It shows America making cars, and suddenly out of nowhere, a couple of years ago, China appears, and it's just like China, won't, bam! China not just surpasses America, but China is literally producing more cars per year than like the next 5 countries together. and we don't understand that in America. We're all like, General Motors, Ford, Chevrolet, Ram, Dodge. It's like, guys, these are toy companies compared to what the Chinese have going. The scope and scale of what China's doing in the automotive industry is beyond comprehension. I mean, we should understand that. I mean, we're supporting a nation of what, 340 million. China's supporting a nation of 1 point how many billion? I mean, it's a big number. Yeah, and then the other thing is, just to give you an idea of the Chinese economy, they run on 5-year plans. I guess that's the
Correct.
thing.
Yep.
And for the last 3 or 4 5-year plans, one of the main objectives was to pull 300 million people out of low income into the middle class. And so for the last 3 5-year plans, they've pulled 300 million people into the middle class. That's 900 million people that have moved into the middle class. 900 million people in the middle class. And what do middle class people do? Consume. That's the whole concept of the middle class. It's the consumption class, the comfort class, the people that are, working but coming home, trying to live in a modicum of comfort with cars, etc. It ain't the American dream anymore, though. It's the Chinese dream, and they're living it. Hundreds of millions, 3 times the American population. In America, we speak of our middle class. We're talking about 80 million people in the American middle class. China every 5 years produces 300 million new middle class people. Guys, the American system ain't what it used to be. China is operating on a completely different level, completely different plane. I take the train from Albany, New York to Washington, D.C. on occasion. And when you get to New York City, you can take the Acela high-speed train. I mean, oh boy, the Acela, but it ain't a high-speed train. I mean, maybe it can go fast on a straightaway, but our rail network, especially around when you get down into South Jersey, into Philly, you got to go slow, because if you go fast, you get derailed because the rails suck. You're literally getting beat to death. I've tried to write on that train, and it's impossible, because as I'm typing, I'm just getting jerked around. Meanwhile, China is built more high-speed trains than you can shake a stick at. And when I say high-speed trains, these are real high-speed trains. And when you ride on them, it's just like,
Yeah, you can have I mean, you see the hostesses come around, they give you a tea, they put it on your drinking tray, and you look up and you see, oh shit, oh yeah, when did we crack 340 kilometers an hour? Oh, well, it takes us a couple minutes to get up to that speed, sir, but enjoy your ride.
Meanwhile, your tea isn't spilled.
Exactly. And to add to this point here, a lot of people still have this vision. Like, I'm reading some comments. Everybody says, oh, but these toy cars are massively expensive in US. That ain't the Chinese that are ramping up the prices. That's
right.
The tariffs, the sanctions, whatever. To understand how this Chinese market works here is all the companies like Huawei, who has some of the largest patent portfolio worldwide, whether you like Huawei or not, they are a mega company here in China. They power some of these cars. If it's not Huawei, they actually call up German manufacturers to do a collaboration. So as much as you might be anti-China on some of these cars, there's a lot of German, logistical equipment put inside them. Maybe it could be, the last car I saw, Pirelli tires. Okay, so you may not like Chinese, but you might like the tires. Okay, the seats, Recaro seats. Okay, China is building these cars in, I would say, as you say, almost 5-year plans, where they say, okay, we're going to put these cars together. Where are we? What area are we weak at in these cars? Is it reliability? Is it tires? Is it battery systems? I mean, Tesla. You guys might say, "Oh yeah, Tesla, it's American." They sell a majority of their profits come out of this country, and they have major manufacturing and logistical chains here in Shanghai. Now, the average American might say, "Oh, but we manufacture cars in America." No, you assemble cars in America. Okay. I call it the Lego economy. You get sent 4 tires, you get sent, 2 or 4 doors, and you're told to assemble it. Here, it's manufacturing. Now, I see other comments where people say, yeah, but the battery, you won't get far. The battery is going to run out. I don't know if people have heard of battery swapping here. The other day, Scott, I got into a Neo car here. Now, first of all, the experience was pretty interesting. I saw this car for the first time, not at a car dealership, in a shopping mall. Okay, they sell these cars in shopping malls, like Apple stores. You go in there, have a tea. It's like you've just arrived in an Apple store. They tell you to download an app, they put the app on the phone. Let's go for a drive. We go for a drive. It's wonderful. It's fantastic. They said, would you like to see what battery swapping is? I said, what the hell's battery swapping? I said, don't you just charge your car? We're kind of moving away from that. I said, okay, what do you got? What is battery swapping? Well, for all those service stations that are really worried in America about maybe losing customers to battery cars, well, these devices can be sold to an average service station in America. It looks like a portable car wash, but in fact, it has a door. It opens. You drive your Neo car in there, or other compatible battery cars. You park that car. They said on the 3rd generation battery swapping device, the robotics, they undo 8 to 12 bolts quickly, drop the battery, and pop another one into your car in under 3 minutes. Faster than you can gas up a normal car. It's battery swapping. And in advance, you can book that appointment at the nearest station while you're in your car driving. So you get there, you run your car into this battery swapping station, you go in, you buy yourself, I don't know, a bottle of Coca-Cola and chips, and you come out and your battery's at 100. So no longer is it, do we take this car from 90 down to 5%? We sit at a charging station for 3 or 4 hours. No. That's 2021, 22. Those days are behind. The battery swappings are here. And the cost of these batteries, they did a comparison, point by point comparison, that it is an 85% savings on fuel costs. So if you're driving across the country and you imagine your gas bill goes down by 85%, I mean, it's incredible. And they don't just sell expensive cars here. They have cars that are even built for mega cities where you just need something maybe to drive around the neighborhood or drive around to work and back. That's a Wuling model. That starts at, I think, $5,000. And then they got cars that go all the way up to $80,000, something like that. But the interesting thing is that you're seeing them on the streets of Russia, which is quite interesting. And yeah, so what we'll do here, Scott, tell us about the U.S. Tour of Duty channel and maybe what's going to be happening with you. I think you're going to be on Danny Haipong's live stream later today, are you? Maybe not.
Look at my schedule. I am on Danny Haipong tonight. Yes.
Okay, guys. So you have to join in and make sure if somebody can drop a link for Danny's channel here tonight. Scott is going to be appearing with Danny. You don't want to miss that show. But let's talk about the U.S. Tour of Duty and what other things that you're up to. And people, you know what, Scott, I'm starting to get messages on my on my videos. Hashtag coin. They're all over my videos now. What's going on with this, man? So tell us, everybody, about the U.S. Tour of Duty, where we can find you, and maybe follow up on this coin thing again.
Well, U.S. Tour of Duty is the YouTube channel, and we have a Rumble channel. But basically, U.S. Tour of Duty, what it started off is when I first started collaborating with Jeff Norman, who is my co-host on a podcast we do called Ask the Inspector. Twice a week. What we were doing is doing things in support of the veterans group. So we would go and try and have a function designed to raise money for libraries or to raise money for a veterans home or things like that. And then when this whole Ukraine conflict started and we were bouncing around, because everybody's going, you got to start your own podcast. You got to start your own podcast. And I'm like, I really don't want to start a podcast. But Jeff's like, I think we could do something. So we came up with an idea. Ask the Inspector is the result. We do it twice a week, once Tuesday, 1 hour. We call it the rapid fire, 3 minutes. I got to answer a question in 3 minutes. And then on Fridays, we do what we call the loquacious, where I just get to expand on it for 2 hours. We have guests sometimes, but the whole idea is, it's an audience participation podcast where we take live questions, phone-in questions, recorded questions. And so, that's done under the U.S. Tour of Duty rubric. We also have a website, scottritterextra.com, where I have a Substack where I publish articles, or we post articles that I publish on other outlets. I write for RT, Sputnik. I write for Consortium News. I write for other outlets on occasion, and they'll get posted there. The coin came out of, I wrote a book and published in 2021, Disarmament, the Time of Perestroika, about my experience as a weapons inspector in the Soviet Union implementing the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty. And the book was picked up by Komsomolskaya Pravda, the largest publisher in Russia, and they published it. So I went to Russia on a book tour, 26 days, 12 cities. It was a fascinating tour. This is where I saw the Chinese cars. I learned so much about Russia, modern day Russia, and such. But, I was like, okay, I'm going over there and I'm going to be meeting people. And, what do I do as a representational gift? I mean, if I meet somebody, how do I say, hi, how you doing? And my wife's like, you got to get I Love New York keychains. And I'm like, that is the worst representational gift I could ever imagine. She said, no, it's a great gift. The Russians are going to love it. And I said, no, I'm going to go old school military and do what we call a challenge coin. And the challenge coin is basically a coin that's been designed to, usually in the military, it's to represent your unit. So you have your unit crest and some other identifying marks on both sides, and it's handed out as a token of appreciation, as to commemorate something, to reward something. But it's that means. Now there's a backstory to the challenge coin, because being in the military, everything's related to drinking. So once I give you a challenge coin, you better have it on you, because if I see you again and I put my challenge coin on the table and you don't have yours, you're buying me drinks. But if you come up to me and put your challenge coin down and I don't have it, I'm buying you drinks. But the drinking aspect is just sort of a little aside. The whole idea was to have something representational. So I printed up 200 of them. And my wife's like, that's too many. The Russians aren't going to like this. And I brought it over there and I handed it out, and everybody I gave it to loved it. But, nobody knew about it until I did an interview live on Russian TV on one of their their main channel, Channel 1, one of their big interviewers, and Katerina. And at the end, one of her things is she asks you, the word that, that defines, what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish. And I knew she was going to ask me that. And I also knew that I had a coin in my pocket. So when we were done, I was going to give her the coin, once the interview ended. But as I'm sitting there going, the word is friendship. And the coin had on one side, shaking hands, one handshake at a time. That was my approach to improving U.S.-Russia relations. And so I gave her the coin on national TV. And I said, my word is friendship. And this is a token of friendship. And I'm offering it to you, one handshake at a time, Well, my God, the thing went viral at that point. Every Russian wanted a coin. I only had 200 of them. And now I have to hold on to them and parse them out because it's got to last till the end of the trip. But the coin was very popular. And then what happened is when I got back, people found out about it, and they're saying, hey, we want a coin. We want a coin. We want a coin. I'm like, I don't have any coins. I only made 200 of them. And so Jeff and I talked about it, and we're like, I'm trying to do this documentary film that has a book company called Waging Peace. And it's about the trip I made and, the search for the Russian soul, to put in perspective, disarmament, etc. But documentary films just don't make themselves. They cost money. And so we're, trying to figure out how do we raise money for this. I said, well, why don't we sell the coin and use the proceeds for the film? We're like, yeah, that's a good idea. So we started it, and I printed up 300 more. They're gone. So I printed up 400 more. They're going. So it's very good. It's helping us generate money that's helping us move this movie forward, because, like I said, nothing happens for free in this world. But what we did is on the show, in order to help promote the coin, I said, why don't we just do a coin giveaway? I had a couple coins. They're each one's uniquely numbered, and some of the numbers have meaning. And so I had a coin that was 420. Now, I'm not a participant in this, but apparently people are. And 420 is a code, I guess, for smoking dope. And so I had this 420 coin, and Jeff has this wonderful collaborator, Tori Mansfield, who used to help us produce the show. And now she and Jeff do another show, another podcast. And I'm like, why don't I give the 420 coin away to Tori, and we'll do it live on air to show appreciation. And it went over well. And then we gave away the 300 coin. And I said, why don't we give away the 300 coin, the Spartan coin, the 300. And we'll just we'll have people, sign up. And Jeff was able to, do it so that you can do a drawing. So we did it, and it was very popular. And I'm just like, why don't we keep doing this? Why don't every episode we just give away a coin? It helps promote the idea of a coin, but it's also sort of a fun thing. So every show, #coin, you put it in there, it goes into a database, and at the end of the show, Jeff spins the wheel, and somebody comes up and we mail out a coin. The coin comes with a certificate that has these QR codes that you use on your cell phone, and you can you can look up the story of the coin. I wrote an article about the story of the coin. You can look up what I call the handshake, which is the moment when I give the coin to Katerina and that whole thing. And then at the top, we have a QR code that right now just takes you to the logo of the movie. But as the movie gets developed and we put things out there, coin number 8,800. Man, if that happens, you got it. I mean, if we sell 8,800 of them, we're doing okay. But so you can track the movie. So it's not just getting a coin, but we also give you something that that brings the coin to life, so to speak. So that's what we're doing. Some people, I know some people, say, oh, you're a grifter, you're trying to do this. Hey, we're raising money for a movie. If that's grift, then I'm guilty. But it's not like we're doing this so that I can go on a Hawaiian vacation. Although, to be honest, that wouldn't be a bad idea either. But no, we're doing it for a good cause. And anybody who gets the coin not only gets a unique piece of history, but it's a decent coin. I don't know if I have one around me. We sold them all, but it's a decent coin. It's well made, well manufactured, but it's also a good story, and it's a good cause.
Well, I think everybody needs to definitely tune into your show. What days are your shows again with the U.S. Tour of Duty and Ask the Inspector, all that kind of stuff? Maybe just to clarify that.
Well, U.S. Tour of Duty is the YouTube channel.
Yep.
But the show is called Ask the Inspector. We do a show on Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and there it is, Valley. You got number 450. On Tuesdays from 3 to 4, we do a 1-hour show, and again, this is the 3-minute rapid round where you ask a question, I have 3 minutes to answer it, and if I don't, Jeff whips me. But we also take advantage of the 1-hour format and the time difference. And we've been bringing on some Russian guests. We had a very interesting Alexei Antonov, a Russian economist, on yesterday. And he provided some fantastic insights into the health of the Russian economy, what's going on economically, because everybody in America knows about sanctions. I wanted a Russian economist to say, well, this is the reality of what's happening with sanctions. He was a very good guest. We have a military expert next week that will on Tuesday. Friday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do the 2-hour version, a more loquacious version. Again, we answer all the questions that people provide or submit to our best of our capabilities. On the 20th, we're going to do something unique. We're going to have a Christmas episode. And so the first hour will be a standard Ask the Inspector. But the second hour, we're going to basically, there's a great guy named Malcolm Burns, and he's a very famous, very well thought of music producer and composer. He's composed music for blockbuster Hollywood movies. He's produced virtually every rock and roll act you can think of, Bob Dylan and others. And he's collaborating with us on the movie to help produce a score for this documentary film. But he has a show, Radio Kingston show, The Long Way Around, and I've been on it a couple times. And the thing about that show is you submit a playlist, and the playlist is you're generally key to what you're going to talk about. And so for 2 hours, we have a conversation, we play music, and every time I've been on, that show has been very meaningful for me and meaningful for people who watch. They say it's pretty cool to do that. So Jeff and I thought that we would have a Christmas show where we each pick 3 rock and roll Christmas songs and talk about them, why they're important to us, what they mean to us for the holiday, and then play the music. And so we're going to do that for the second hour. And it goes for as long as it goes. I mean, so if we pick songs that mean that we have to be on for an hour and a half, we're going to be on for an hour and a half. But the idea is because that'll be the final show of the year as we go into the holidays. And so to leave everybody with a little bit of Christmas cheer, that's what we're going to do on December 20th.
Okay, so that show is December 20th. What time is it airing again?
It airs at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The first hour will be from 8 to 9 will be a standard Ask the Inspector. But at 9 o'clock, we're going to transition over to the holiday special. And we'll just do that for as long as the music lasts.
Well, great. I will also, so everyone doesn't forget, on that day, I will, on my community tab to my channel here, I will actually post a link for that show. I want everybody to go join that show to support Jeff and Scott. They put fantastic content on the internet, as well as great to see you on the China social media here, Scott. Your channels are growing here, and maybe we'll get into that a little bit more in the next time that we chat. But I wish you and your family and everyone great holidays coming up, and look forward to seeing you on Mr. Haipong's, Danny Haipong's channel here later today. Everybody, say goodbye to Scott and me here. You guys have yourself a fantastic day, and Scott, we'll see you soon.
Okay. Well, in short, the answer is yes. It's not just the assassination of the Iranian commander in Syria. Israel has assassinated a Hamas commander in Beirut, which is an attack in Beirut, which is a red line for Hezbollah. The idea being to deliberately provoke Hezbollah into responding, which would promote a larger conflict between Israel and Hezbollah, and by extension drag Iran into it. And today there was a twin suicide bombing in Kerman, Iran, on the occasion of the anniversary, I think the 4th anniversary of the assassination by the United States of Qasem Soleimani, the legendary Iranian Quds Force leader. The death toll is mounting. Last I saw, it was well over 100 people. And again, Iran is blaming Israel for this. And the bottom line is there will be retaliation, and the idea is, see, Netanyahu right now can't get his war council to agree to attack Iran, to initiate the conflict, and plus Israel knows that they can't take Iran on alone, that they need the United States to join. The United States just doesn't want to do it. So what Israel's doing is provoking Hamas, provoking Hezbollah, provoking Iran into carrying out an attack against Israel that would justify Israel turning to the United States and saying we have to respond against Iran. So this clearly is a trap for the United States.
Are you finding it difficult to keep up with the news while you're traveling there, or you have enough time to check the internet and so forth?
I mean, it takes a commitment, but no, I'm reading the news every morning, and then every night before I go to bed, and then if I can during the day, I'll follow it.
All right, good, because we don't want our favorite weapons inspector when he's out of the loop, only when you're in the loop. Let's move on to our next question. Iran is on the minds of a lot of folks. Sammy in Belgium, does the Iranian warship Alborz pose any significant threat to the U.S., and will this escalate things further?
I don't believe it poses a significant threat to the United States. It's a single ship. I think it's accompanied by some logistics ship. We could sink that ship in a millisecond if we wanted to. But the problem is that that's escalation that we don't want. We what the Iranians are doing is getting in our space, getting in our head, making operations in the region more complicated, more difficult. But Iran's not going to attack the United States. They're not going to start the fight first. They're putting that ship out there as sort of a deterrence to say, here we are. The Iranians may screen the Houthi, compelling the United States to either, ignore what the Houthi are doing or sink an Iranian ship, thereby generating the excuse for a broader war with Iran, which the United States doesn't want. And why don't we want it? Because we can't win. Sinking an Iranian ship is not a victory, because we'll sink that ship, then Iran will destroy our bases in the region, maybe sink other American ships. That's not the fight we want. And then once it's started, how do we finish it? We don't have sufficient forces to finish the job. So it would become one of these perpetual conflicts, which we never win. I mean, yeah, we can take a submarine. The USS Florida is floating off the area, 124 cruise missiles, and we can cycle those cruise missiles through a target list. And then when we're done, that's 124 targets we hit. And so what? The Iranians have been preparing for this years. There's nothing we're going to do to the Iranians that will take them by surprise. So, and then we're stuck with a never-ending conflict. And, as history has showed, we always end up quitting because we don't have staying power. And that's the last thing we want or need at this point in time. So the Iranian ship isn't a threat in terms of it, able to directly threaten Americans, but it's definitely a hindrance.
All right, we have a voicemail message from a woman who has a theory about the Netanyahu, and she wants to get your take on this theory.
Hi, Scott. I have a theory, and I'd like to know your opinion. Netanyahu is on thin ice, of course, but now he's really sunken through the ice now that judicial reform has not passed. At the same time, the IDF has publicly announced that they're taking troops out of Gaza, more than just the Golani Brigade, like substantial amount of troops. I'm wondering, of course they took the troops out because they were getting their ass kicked, but do you think it was also because the war cabinet wants to put them on the border of Lebanon and focus on the Lebanese front, since they now killed a major Hamas leader in Beirut, and Hezbollah has since 2006 said that if Israel ever attacks Beirut, they will attack Tel Aviv. As you've mentioned many times, Hezbollah is no joke. So it'd be pretty crazy for the Israelis to, take on that bluff. But do you think because Netanyahu is now really screwed because of the judicial reform thing not passing, that this is his last Hail Mary to be sort of the dictator in power? Do you think he actually wants Hezbollah to attack Tel Aviv?
The short answer is yes, he does, because it's his only... Look, Netanyahu doesn't care about Israel. We need to be clear about that. He cares about Netanyahu. If he cared about Israel, he would have withdrawn from the political stage a long time ago. Nobody who could claim to care about Israel would have formed the government that he has formed, this far right-wing government that has dug Israel into a hole internationally. His judicial reforms, the reforms of basic law, were designed to allow his political wing to take control of the judiciary, to block any effort by the judiciary to follow through on his indictments on corruption charges, that if he went to trial and was found guilty, would put him in jail for life. He's a very corrupt man, or innocent until proven guilty. So he's been alleged to have been a very corrupt man, a very naughty boy. And, right now, if he's going to be thrown out. He's one of the most unpopular prime ministers out there. The only thing that keeps him in is this war. And if he starts withdrawing troops from Gaza, that's implying that the war is moving in a different phase one that doesn't necessitate the kind of emergency powers and emergency governance that Netanyahu has assumed since October 7th. So he needs a new war, an expanded war, and that war will be with Hezbollah and then hopefully with Iran if the United States can be brought in. So this is what he's hoping. He's hoping that he can redeem himself through fire, redeem himself through conflict, through war. And he's looking for a broader conflict. I'm hoping that his war cabinet will tell him no, because the reality is, if you think that the Hamas whipped up on the IDF in Gaza, you ain't seen nothing yet. If Hezbollah ever unleashes the full weight of its military capability, they will kick at Israel's ass from sundown to sunset.
All right. The next question is from Charles Whitaker in Singapore. What do you make of the reports by the Hindustan Times that Hamas is using Chinese weapons and that an Iranian drone attacked an Indian ship?
Well, I mean, a report is a report. I don't have any independent way to confirm what the Hindustan Times has reported. If they have evidence that Hamas is using Chinese weapons, why not? Hamas, will acquire weapons on the global market directly or indirectly. So it's possible. There's nothing suspicious about it. China sells weapons on the global market. There are middlemen out there who sell. Hamas is using American weapons. Hamas is using Russian-made weapons, North Korean-made weapons. Hamas will use whatever weapons they can get their hands on. So it doesn't, it doesn't shock me that those weapons are there. About the drone attack, again, something happened. There's stories that it was an Iranian drone. It makes no sense, but if there's evidence to back that up, then so be it. Put the evidence on the table. But there's literally no reason for Iran to be attacking an Indian ship in the Indian Ocean. There's no justification for it, and it just doesn't matter. Iran doesn't go out of its way to create unnecessary provocations. Not at a time when they're trying to manage the escalation of the conflict between Israel and Gaza and Israel and Hezbollah. They don't need to go out and confuse things even more. But again, Hindustan Times is a newspaper. They have sources. If they're going to make that claim, maybe they should put some evidence on the table to back it up.
All right. We're getting comments from Twitter. We'll make sure we get a couple of those inserted. This is the first time, or X, I mean, this is the first time we've been able to insert them directly. That is a good thing. The next question comes from, hold on, let me do it. Sorry about that. Mohammed Saleh in London. How is the assassination of the Hamas leader in Beirut going to affect the war effort against the occupation forces? Sometimes you've already kind of answered these questions. That's because you don't see these questions in advance. So it's a little bit redundant, but you want to take another shot at this one?
Certainly. Look, one of the big things that was happening that could lead to potential de-escalation was that Hamas had been talking with the Qataris and the Egyptians about the release of hostages and about bringing humanitarian goods in. And what the assassination has done is that Hamas has stopped talking with everybody. They've just pulled back and said there is no talk going on right now. That means that the Israeli hostages that are in Gaza will continue to suffer, continue to be prisoner. It also means that there won't be a ceasefire, that the go on. This is what Israel wanted. See, Israel was looking at progress being made. Hamas was being reasonable. Hamas was saying, we killed was actually somebody that the Egyptians don't have high regard for the mainstream Hamas leadership. But the guy they killed in Beirut, the Egyptians could talk to. They were talking to. They were talking, through Hamas, talking to Hamas through him, through his offices. This was a guy that was held in high regard. He would meet with the king of Jordan. He would meet with other Arab leaders. This was the kind of guy that if you want to deal with Hamas, you want to be in Hamas. This is why Israel killed him, because they don't want people dealing with Hamas. So it's shut down lines of communication. There's no talk going on right now. And what it's done is it's guaranteed an extension of the conflict, which gives Israel continued carte blanche to slaughter Palestinian civilians.
Here's a voicemail message from a gentleman named Hazir.
Hello, Scott. Hope you're doing well. This question comes from a Kurd from Iran regarding the reshaping of the world order within the next 25 years. Given the waning power of the United States due to its relentless overstretch and hegemony, are we going to witness a new superpower seizing the throne from the United States, namely China, within the next 25 years? Or is it going to be check and balance between the superpowers, like China in cahoot with Russia and EU with the United States, sort of like a Cold War, and we people in this region falling victim as pawns on a chessboard?
Well, it's a good question. I think the answer is in the intent of, because the United States is clearly on the decline. First of all, guys, when I say it's on the decline, that doesn't mean that we've collapsed tomorrow. We're still a superpower. We're still one of the greatest powers in the world today, but we are seeing the limits of this power. And we're also realizing that many of the things that combine together to make America the power that it is, our economy, our military, our political system, are suffering, going through difficulties. And so, collectively, they represent, a weakening America. And then the vacuum that's created, it's being filled by others. Look, if China wanted to be a global superpower like the United States, then it could probably position itself to fill that down the road. Fortunately, China has no desire to become the new America. Neither does Russia. Both China and Russia instead are looking for a multipolar world. This is where institutions like the Shanghai Cooperation Organization or BRICS become very important. It's very difficult to speak of Iran or Saudi Arabia or Egypt becoming pawns in a new superpower race when they have joined BRICS, and Russia and China will be expanding BRICS to bring in even more pawns, potential pawns. Why? Because Russia doesn't want to play that game. China doesn't want to play that game. They want to deal with a multipolar world that is a law-based international order, not a rules-based international order. And that's the direction that we're drifting to right now. And so I'm rather optimistic that in the next 25 years, you're going to see nations like Iran, nations like Saudi Arabia, nations like Egypt able to project themselves onto the international stage in a manner that reflects their sovereignty, meaning that they will do what they want to do, as opposed to being pawns of a larger game being played by global superpowers.
All right, let's take a question coming in live on Twitter, or on X. I got to get in the habit of saying X. Sophoros on X. Did the U.S. know about the domestic Iran attack? Because a day or two, they pulled back the aircraft carrier in the Mediterranean, maybe to prevent any missile attack.
Yeah, look, the aircraft carrier that was pulled back was the USS Gerald Ford that was in the Mediterranean. I believe that Dwight D. Eisenhower is still operating in the Red Sea region, although it's been pulled back away from the Yemeni coast. And I think the third carrier, which is operating in the Pacific in the vicinity of Singapore, it might be the Carl Vinson, I don't know, hasn't been brought into the region. But the Dwight D. Eisenhower was in the Persian Gulf a couple of weeks ago, and they pulled that out because they realized how vulnerable it was to Iranian attack if there was this escalation. And so they got it the hell out of the Persian Gulf, because if things went south real quick, that's a major asset that would be lost. But it's late and I'm tired. Could you throw that question up one more time? Because my brain drifted.
Sure. Now we have another internet freeze, I think. First a brain freeze, then an internet freeze.
There.
Move around or something.
But I can't sit here and say that I have evidence that the United States knew about this. What I can say, I'm moving. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Can you hear me, Jeff? No?
Yeah, I can hear you. We hear you.
Okay,
I don't know.
So I'll continue. Put the 3-minute timer. Give me some time on that 3-minute timer.
All right.
Okay. But the CIA is very knowledgeable of the players in the region, and they have connectivity with the I can hear you, the usual suspects. And I believe that the CIA had a heads up that something was going to happen, and that may have been why they pulled the naval ships back.
Okay. Can you hear me? We hear you, Scott. Kal in Denmark. Since 2014, civilian areas in the Donbass have been shelled from the Ukrainian side of the front. But even 2 years into the war, it continues. Why has it been so difficult for the Russian troops to stop it? Because they know exactly.
Am I going to read it, or are you going to read it?
I read it. I read it. Go. I don't think Scott can hear me. Go, Scott.
I can hear you fine. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Well, I read the question. I don't think you can hear me fine. We are having severe challenges here due to Scott's internet connection. This happens a lot in even U.S. hotels. I think it's partially based on how many guests in the hotel are using the Wi-Fi at the same time. Well, let's give this a little more time. If we may have to just end this a little earlier than usual if we can't get this to work.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. I can hear you, but I don't see you. Let's see if he logs back in. I don't know if you folks saw Scott on Judge Knapp's show, Judging Freedom. I think it was yesterday. They went into a very professional studio in Moscow to do it. But that was during the day. So it's not so easy when it's 11 o'clock at night Moscow time. Scott is coming back in now. There he is. All right, the old reboot solution. Can you hear me? Hello, Scott. It does not seem that you can hear me. All right. Well, I guess
No, you're coming in very broken. I don't know if but the Iranians have been, they create something called the axis of resistance, and it stretches from Lebanon, where Hezbollah is, through Syria, into Iraq with the pro-Iranian militias, Iran, and then down into Yemen with the Houthi. And Iran, provides, and I guess Hamas is thrown into that now too. And Iran provides financial resources and in some cases direct military assistance. With Yemen, there's no doubt that Iran has been providing Yemen with the resources necessary to take on Saudi Arabia in a war by proxy, ballistic missiles, drone capabilities, etc. But the Houthi do what the Houthi want to do. It ain't like the Houthi say, oh, big brother Iran's got to tell us what to do. The Houthi woke up and said, screw it, baby, we're going to war. We're fighting in defense of the Palestinians. And Iran's going, no, don't. We're trying to manage this escalation here. We don't want you. But the Houthi are the wild boys of the Middle East, and they're just like, yeehaw, go. And they start firing missiles, they firing stuff. And now they've done something that really hurts, is because this, I guess it's a Al Babel or I can't pronounce it, but the little narrow thing on the, where the Red Sea comes into the Gulf of Aden, there's a narrow little passageway where all the ships have to go through, and they're in the range of everything the Yemenis have. And the Yemenis have said, as long as Israel's doing what they're doing in Gaza, no shipping will be allowed to go through if it's heading to Israel. And they're sink. I don't think they think they've sunk stuff, but they've hit stuff, put it on fire, they've captured stuff. And so now what's happening is that, ships are very expensive, and the owners don't like their ships to catch on fire or be captured. And so they're diverting all the way around Africa, coming in the other way to get to Israel. And that's very, very expensive. It's costing Israel tens of billions of dollars of denied economic activity. And so the Houthi are actually very sophisticated here. This is a very sophisticated weapon that they've dealt the Israelis. And the United States is going, damn it, now we got to respond here. But if we respond there, we got to take those forces and move them here. And remember, we've already said we don't have any money for this. All those aircraft carriers that we deployed to scare Hezbollah, it's basically eating up the Navy's operational budget, meaning money that was supposed to be set aside for training and other things is now being spent on these operations, which means there's no training taking place. There's other things that aren't happening. And now you want to expand naval operations into this area. Where's the money coming from? This is why the U.S. Navy is calling up the Australians and saying, hey, get some of your ships up here right now. We need you to take care of the security. And the Australians are going, no, we're not going to do that. This is a problem for the United States because we don't have the force structure to do everything at once. And so the Houthi have dealt a huge blow, not only to Israel, but to the United States. And the only way that we could rectify this is to go to war against them. But the Saudis have been using American-provided aircraft and American intelligence since 2014, and they haven't beat the Houthi yet. And then again, who's going to pay for this? Where's the money coming from? We're going to have another war in Yemen, a forever war. And none of these wars have gone well for us. And if we go to war against the Houthi, the whole region's going to blow up. The axis of resistance will just go haywire. These militias that are firing against American forces in Iraq and in Syria, believe it or not, are holding back. They could do a lot more. They're simply reminding the Americans that they're here and that there will be price to be paid so long as this conflict goes on, that nothing is free. And what has the United States done? We've responded very minimally. We've bombed a couple warehouses associated with the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Command, but we've bombed those warehouses before in I guess Abu Kamal across the river from Al-Qaim. We've been hitting that place, the same place over and over again. It's like the Iranians go, okay, rebuild the warehouse so America can bomb it next week, kind of thing. We're not doing real harm on the Iranians because we don't want to. If we do real harm on the Iranians, then they get involved. And now we're talking about an expansive conflict, and we only got 2,000 guys in that region. That ain't a lot of guys. And if the whole region blows up, those 2,000 guys can be swamped. They can be overrun. And now we have to divert all our air power into that area. Again, who's going to pay for it? We don't have a budget for this. And now we're doing that. And this war gets out of control, spins out of control. This is a nightmare scenario for the Biden administration. And if it blows up enough, because another area that everybody's worried about is what's going to happen with Hezbollah. Hezbollah has done a masterful job of escalation management. They have been, I mean, it's like the Israelis, are sitting there in this boxing match with Hamas, and Hamas split the eye, and Israel's bleeding here, and Hezbollah is just sitting there once in a while going, "Let me rub some salt in that wound for you. Come on, get out of here." Boom, boom, pow. You get salt in that wound. Stop it. Hezbollah is just sitting there pissing them off because they're really, really and it's hurting them. Remember how sophisticated I said the Houthi were? Understand that most of what Hezbollah is doing against Israel is economic in nature. Yes, they're taking down Israeli troops. They're destroying a lot of Israeli tanks, a lot of Israeli infrastructure. But what they're really doing is terrorizing the north so much that 70,000 Israelis had to be withdrawn from the northern settlements and resettled in temporary accommodations. That ain't free. That ain't free. It's costing Israel billions of dollars. And that 70,000, who, they had jobs up there, which means they're working, they're producing, there's taxes, the economy kind of stuff. They're here now. They ain't working. They ain't producing. They're just sucking up resources. It's a huge, huge, giant, gutting of the Israeli economy. The same thing out of what Hamas is doing in the settlements in Negev. People tens of thousands had to be relocated. Man, this is a giant hole in the Israeli economy, and it's unsustainable. On top of that, 300,000 reservists. You know what a reservist is? It's a working man. It's a guy who has a job. He has a family. He is participating in the Israeli economic experience. And now he's not. Now he's in the reserves where he's getting a paycheck because they have to pay him, but he's not producing anything. That job is gapped. Whatever he was doing in the Israeli economy ain't happening right now. And billions of dollars. So what Hezbollah is doing, what the Houthi are doing, the economic impact on this is destroying the Israeli economy, destroying it. And this is unsustainable for Israel. So this alone is prompting the Israelis to say, we have to resolve this fight. You got people like Gallant. I think he's the Minister of Defense right now. What a character, with his genocidal talk. But he's talking about we're going to take it to them. Gallant knows, though, and so does the Israeli Defense Force, that if Israel were to open up a second front against Hezbollah, that Hezbollah will take Galilee, that northern Israel will fall. Because Hezbollah's got 80,000 guys. Many of them, most of them perhaps, are combat hardened. That means they've been fighting in that, the Syrian conflict. These guys know war. They're very well trained, very well equipped, very well motivated, and they have a plan. If you think the Hamas plan that was executed on October 7th was innovative, you haven't seen anything yet. Hezbollah has a plan to take northern Israel, and they will take northern Israel, and there's nothing Israel can do to stop it, which is a nightmare. So nobody wants escalation. So in a way, because we can't afford to escalate, the United States can't afford to escalate, Israel can't afford to escalate, you make it even, you give the people who are putting the pressure on you even more latitude because they know you don't want to escalate. So they're going to push the envelope even more and create more and more pressure. And that's what's happening right now. This is the untold aspect of this war, but it's this aspect that's probably going to promote, the collapse of Israel more so than just Hamas defeating Israel in Gaza.
Yeah, and maybe lastly on this, do you feel like the confluence of these various aspects of Israel's brutal onslaught and what it's produced, both in its troubles with fighting Hamas on its own terrain and the fact that that there is an axis of resistance that has been managing a conflict escalator that is prepared to move up. Do you feel like, given that Biden has given this deadline, that Israel will actually follow it? Because Israel's capacity for rational military and political behavior, especially since the aftermath of October 7th, appears to have diminished nearly to non-existence. I'm curious on your thoughts about that.
I mean, it's a tough political question here in America because of the control that the Israeli lobby has over everything. Congress, the presidency, the media, the spin. So it's an uphill struggle to get America to, change its policy regarding Israel. In the past, it was Israel can do no wrong. We support Israel no matter what. But we're now paying a price for that. And so I do believe you're going to see pressure being put on Israel. I think Netanyahu is finished. I think he's going to go. I think Biden is going to make it clear that continued American support of Israel is contingent upon a change in the Netanyahu government. We pretend that it doesn't mean Netanyahu is going to go, but if you dissolve this right-wing coalition, then Netanyahu can't continue as prime minister because it's consensus-driven. He has to get a ruling coalition. He won't be able to. Somebody else will step in and take over, and that's what we want. But here's the danger of all this, Danny. Here's the problem. And we got to be honest about this, because right now we're being lulled into a false sense of complacency. Hamas is kicking ass. There's no doubt about it. Hamas will not be defeated. But who likes Hamas? Does Egypt like Hamas? Nope. Does Jordan like Hamas? No. Does Syria like Hamas? Not really. They were just at war with them a couple of years ago. They tolerate Hamas. Turkey, yeah, Turkey likes Hamas, but not that much. Not enough to go to war for them. And the further we get away, you realize that Hamas is very unpopular. And if we just erase the term Hamas and insert the term Palestinian, let's be honest, nobody cares about the Palestinians. There's a whole bunch of demonstrations taking place right now, but these are cause-effect demonstrations, meaning that if it weren't for the slaughter of the Gazans, these demonstrations wouldn't be happening. These people aren't going to go into the streets and demonstrate on behalf of a two-state solution or a one-state solution or a free Palestine. They're demonstrating because the bombing's happening. So what happens when the bombs stop falling, when the genocide stops? Are these people going to continue to be out there putting the pressure on the United States? Is the United States going to continue to feel isolated, or is it going to go back to what it was, where people say, wait a minute, so they've stopped, we don't have to turn on TV and look at dead Palestinian babies anymore? Oh, thank God. So let's get back to what we were doing, which is chugging along with normal economic activity where the Palestinians are problematic. We don't want to do it. And so the danger here is that all the sacrifice that the Palestinians have made, and believe me, they are making the suffering they're doing through, and you see there's a growing recognition amongst them that they have to do this. This is their burden to pay to get statehood, that all of that will be for naught, because there will be a desire to, we don't want to embarrass Israel. We don't want to humiliate Israel. We're going to look for a compromise solution where we have a moderate Israeli government who will return to giving lip service to, reviving Oslo, but never really being serious about reviving Oslo. And gradually the Palestinians will be forgot again. I'm afraid that's the direction that we're heading. And so, it's imperative that the international community find a way to sustain this pressure, because change will happen, because the United States feels the pressure. I mean, when we start turning on Israel, the pressure is working. All right. But the problem is, let's say we get Israel to change, the fighting stops in Gaza. Now the United Nations comes in with their, because the UN doesn't like the Palestinians either. I mean, nobody likes the Palestinians. They've been getting screwed by everybody forever. And so you start turning it over to these old institutions, and it's forgotten. The only one out there articulating right now for the Palestinians seriously is Iran. And here's where the hope is, because Iran has good relations with two nations who are the nemesis of the United States in the geopolitical arena, Russia and China. And Russia and China have historically kept sort of a hands-off approach to the Palestinian issue. But I think Russia and China, I think they do care about the Palestinians. There's a genuine concern. You see, Putin articulating things that no Western leader has ever articulated about what Israel is doing, criticizing Israel. And China's talking about getting engaged. And it's in China's interest to take advantage of what's going on to expand. Because what is Gaza going to need? Infrastructure development. Who's pretty good at that? China. So it's an opportunity for China. It also, if you keep pushing the necessity of a Palestinian state to resolve this Arab-Israeli conflict, you keep putting pressure on the United States too. What the United States wants to do is quickly get back to, even though Biden says that we won't be returning to October 6th, I guarantee you all the U.S. wants to do is get back to October 6th. That's all we want to do. We're not looking forward to any of this innovative political stuff in the Middle East. It scares us. Russia and China, on the other hand, are looking forward to something like that. So I'm not giving up hope for the Palestinians, but I am saying that all this stuff that we're seeing, all this pressure, these votes at the UN, that can disappear that quick. And you know it. You know it can, because we're not talking about, a deep foundation of love for the Palestinians out there in the world. We don't like seeing dead Palestinian kids. So people are rallying to the cause of Palestine. But when the kids stop dying, will that support for Palestine still be there? And that's the big question.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a big question, and I share your sentiment about where the hope is, because yes, Iran is indeed a very serious actor when it comes to supporting Palestine, and I think you're exactly right. Both Russia and China, when it comes to this region, see the Palestine question as both one of course, standing for international law. That's what Russia and China like to do. They like to promote it because it's within their interests. Most stable, rational countries who are thinking about both their own development and what's good for the world in terms of their own development. It's stability. It's peace. It's not having this massive conflict, which could lead, that's genocidal in nature, that could lead to a very hot war between most countries in the region. That is an ultimate disaster for Russia and China. So, of course, this Palestine question is so important to not just stabilize, but also, Russia and China are the only countries outside of the region, for the most part, outside of some outliers that don't have the same kind of influence. But the biggest countries that do support a Palestinian state and legitimately do, not giving lip service like Blinken does when, he says we're for this two-state solution, and then, green lights the absolute eradication of it that Israel is pursuing. Both Russia and China actually do support this.
Yeah, and look, we are living in an age of geopolitical transformation. I mean, it sounds very academic. It sounds like geopolitics 201. Your junior level course in college for that international relations degree. But it's real and it's happening, and it's in many ways it's exciting, but in many ways it's scary, because we collectively, the world, have for so long grown accustomed to American hegemony. We can talk about how we're opposed to it, and everybody's like, we're against American imperialism, we're against hegemony, we're against the rules-based international order. Of course you are, except you're not, because you are for stability. And while there is a whole bunch of instability in the world out there, there's a whole bunch of stability that's brought about by this. And people are lulled into a false sense of complacency by the perception of stability. And right now, this transformation that's taking place from the American singularity to this global multipolarity, BRICS and all that stuff, it scares people, because it means you have to put your faith and your trust in something else. Now, if you're somebody who has been disrupted by the American singularity, yeah, you're ready to jump ship. But if you're somebody whose life has been chugging along in relative comfort, it's a scary proposition, a frightening proposition. So it's not, automatic logic where people say, well, America's failed, so we're going to jump on the Chinese and the Russian ship. Well, for many places in the world, America hasn't failed. We didn't get to be number one because we're a bunch of losers. Okay, we did some things right, and we bullied our way to the top, whatever you want to say. But America is a very powerful nation that has a lot of successes attached to it. And a lot of people around the world found those successes attractive, especially the political and economic elites who make money off the American singularity. And so this idea that we're just going to seamlessly transfer power over to the Russians and the Chinese, that ain't going to happen. This is a very scary time. And it would be scary if this transformation was taking place in a conflict-free environment. But now we start throwing in the not only the reality of war, but what's that biblical statement? Rumors of war. There will be rumors of war. There will be wars and rumors of war. So we have real war, but we have rumors of war too. Potential of conflict that is generated by the friction that comes from this transformation. It scares the crap out of me. And I think it scares the crap out of just about anybody who's out there, because, is the United States willing to go gently into that good night? Dylan from Dylan Thomas here. Are we going to rage against the dying of the light? And my fear is that we're going to rage, and we're going to lash out, and we're going to create problems. We're going to make as much friction as possible, rather than doing the smart thing, which is to smoothly transition and take an important seat at the table of multipolarity. We're going to resist that for as long as possible. And the consequences aren't just going to be economic and political disruption, but it can be, chaos and conflict as well. So as much as it makes sense for Russia and China to step into this Palestinian, crisis and be the leaders to get us out, it's just not that easy. America's not going to give up the role that it's enjoyed for the last, 40, 50 years as the lead influencer in the Middle East region. We're not going to, hand that mantle over to Russia and China willingly. So there's a lot of disruptive capacity out there, a lot of mischief for America to cause, going forward.
Yes, indeed, and perhaps we can close the program on this. You wrote a couple of articles in the last couple of weeks. One of them is for Energy Intelligence. You wrote about, is the U.S. still an essential nation? And you also wrote for RT recently an article about the U.S. military's multi-trillion-dollar fraud. And there were a lot of interlocking, very interconnected points about everything that you just stated. And so I wanted to ask you to close here, with regard to these developments. You are also trying to build a campaign, waging peace. You're trying to develop a film. I'll pull all of this stuff up as you're talking. Given that the United States is spending so much on its military, and all of its maneuvers and its leadership are committed to these maneuvers, point to a pretty disastrous conflict that you say with Russia, with China, and you also have this unresolved and with what's gone on with Israel's onslaught in Gaza, obviously still a very relevant point, the Middle East or West Asia, that is still very much a possibility of potential hot conflict. Given all of this, I mean, one, how do you feel like your film Waging Peace will contribute to helping the United States become a more rational actor on the world stage? And two, where do you see this going? Do you see, because on the one hand we have the United States' belligerence is so clear for all of us, but on the other hand there are some pretty stark barriers, a lot of money being spent, not a lot of wars being won, and that could very well lead to massive changes in its own right. So I'll kick it to you while I pull up your materials.
Well, I'm old school American, I guess I will say, is that I have faith in the system. I know if I glance over to the comments, I'm probably going to be eviscerated for saying that. How could you have faith in the system? How could you? Look, if I don't have faith in the system, if I don't believe in the potential of this country, then what the hell do I believe in? I mean, America doesn't exist. It's not, it's not a viable entity. And I'm not willing to go down that route. So I hold out hope that the American people will be able to be awakened by all that's happening around him. I wrote this article in RT, and one of the things I talk in there is about the fact that the United States has grown so accustomed to throwing money at the Department of Defense because we just assumed that if we funded it, then America will be able to win every war in the world. And what the American people are finding out is that not only could we not defeat the Taliban, not only could we not defeat Al-Qaeda, we can't beat Russia, China. We can't beat anybody. We can't beat Iran. We don't have the ability to do this. And yet we're spending all this money. And so I think there's a growing sense of betrayal. And the idea of, America being the essential nation, we can't be the essential nation when we don't allow ourselves to be essential. I mean, essential means useful. America is essential because you can't solve a problem without America there. But when America becomes the problem, we're not essential. We're the opposite of essential. We're disposable, and that's the world is finding out, especially because America's been operating with this our way or the highway concept. We sanction you if you don't agree with us. We go to war with you, but we can't go to war with you anymore because we can't win any wars because we don't have a military capable of winning wars. Sanctions don't work. And what the world's finding out is, hey, the world can function pretty good without America. In fact, the world probably functions better without America. And so America's got to change the way it's going. If we wait for the government to make this decision, we're screwed. The change has to come from below, from the American people. The American people have to become empowered with knowledge and information so that they can hold the people they elect to higher office accountable for what they do in our collective names, maybe elect better people who to represent us. And so ultimately it comes down to conditioning the minds of the American people, exposing them to new ways of thinking. And so the purpose of the Waging Peace documentary was to build upon the experiences that I had in Russia when I went on a book tour, 26 days, 12 cities, talking about my book, Disarmament at the Time of Perestroika, which is about the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty implementation of the late 1980s, early 1990s, arms control, and how we successfully implemented this during the height of the Cold War and part of this process of tearing down barriers between Russia and the Soviet Union, the United States and the Soviet Union, United States and Russia. It was a wonderful experience. And so I wanted to capture it and find a way to provide it to an American audience. And so I decided on making a documentary film and an accompanying book. And this is the Waging Peace project, and you can support it on the ScottRitterExtra.com. There's the ability, you see the ability to donate there. To make a documentary film, I made a documentary film in Shifting Sands back in 2001, 2002. It cost $475,000 to make. That's 2001, 2002 money. To make a documentary film today could be more expensive, depending. Depending on the kind of film you want to make. We were hoping to get one that could be distributed widely, be seen by as many people as possible. That takes money. So any support people can give would be deeply appreciated. The film's going to get made. If we have a limited budget, then we operate within a limited budget, and maybe we only do an internet release of the film. That, it is what it is. But the bottom line is to get something out there that can be used to, in this case, attack the disease of Russophobia. It's like a I don't want to say vaccine. Gosh, that'll get me in trouble. It's an antidote to the poison of Russophobia. Russophobia is the fear of Russia. That fear is generated from ignorance. You're afraid of that which you don't know and you don't understand. And what the Biden administration out there talking about Putin, Chuck Schumer, Putin. It's as if this nation of 150 million people doesn't exist. This vast nation called Russia. So the idea is to get the American people to reimagine Russia based upon reality, not the fiction of the Biden administration or of the American government or the American establishment. It's a tall order, but it's necessary to promote what I'm really pushing, which is